The 6th of March, 1945, Cologne, Germany. A fading 11-year-old child. A Nazi parent convinced black blood would defile her. And a single American trooper whose blood was her lone opportunity to live. This is the factual account of how one transfusion altered three fates and showed that all the propaganda guaranteed was false. The needle pierces flesh. Greta Zimmermann's limb, pallid, frail, covered in dust from the ruined structure, rests inert on the temporary cot. Her mouth is ashen. Captain Thomas Reed's fingers work with expert accuracy, yet his jaw is clenched. The blood pouch dangles over her, deep crimson, near black in the faint glow of the Cologne Field Hospital. The rubber line winds down, transporting lifeblood from Private Marcus Johnson's vessels into the child. Hans Zimmermann observes from a yard off, his expression the shade of cinders. He can view it, the blood flowing via the clear pipe. From the African-American trooper positioned near the physician, his dark limbs still bandaged, gauze held at the bend of his arm. Into his child. Into Greta. Each placard he had ever witnessed flares in his memory. The party's admonitions. That black blood transports sickness, ethical decay, physical pollution. The phrases he had instructed Greta when she was a girl of 8, trustful and naive. Reed keeps his head down. Her pressure is rising. 80/50. She could survive. Hans's hands are trembling. He clutches the table's rim to conceal it, yet his entire frame quakes. 20 minutes earlier he said no. 20 minutes earlier, when Reed informed him the sole compatible blood group in the whole field hospital was Johnson's, Hans declined. Despite Greta's respiration becoming faint. Despite her flesh growing frigid. Let her perish, German, he had stated. Reed had gazed at him. Not with rage. With an emotion more awful, compassion. You have 17 minutes, the American physician declared. Then our window closes. Decide. Now Hans observes his daughter's torso lift, lower, lift once more, firmer, from blood. His leader assured him would end her. 3 years prior, Hans Zimmermann was a convert. Not zealous, just a male who ceased inquiry. The placards pasted on each city block. The assemblies. The guarantees that certain blood held venom while German blood remained clean. Factual science, they claimed, verified by physicians in Berlin. He instructed his daughter Greta in these falsehoods. She believed him. Youngsters always believe. Hans did not begin as a firm adherent. Prior to 1933, he vended policies, cast ballots for Social Democrats. Yet the party was omnipresent. His employment demanded affiliation. Then followed the triumphs. Austria, Poland, France, and skepticism turned perilous. By 1942, the indoctrination was no longer indoctrination. It was simple fact, until it was false. By February 1945, Hans's spouse Maria was deceased, interred beneath RAF debris. His town was wreckage. He returned from Wehrmacht garrison service to discover Greta residing with neighbors. 9 pounds thinner, gaze too mature for 11. On March 6th, U.S. ordnance struck Cologne's eastern districts. Hans brought Greta to the basement. They remained 3 days in the blackness. No nourishment, no liquid save from a fractured pipe. Then a round struck the structure over them. Hans recalls the noise like the world ripping apart. The basement ceiling fractured. A structural support swung low. He yanked Greta clear, but not quickly enough. A fragment, warped metal, no larger than his thumb, pierced her flank, just beneath her ribcage. She emitted a faint noise. An astonished inhalation. Blood stained across her clothing. Deep crimson, excessive. Hans pushed his palm against the injury. The blood seeped between his digits. When the bombardment ceased hours after, he bore her up to the road. The Americans had captured this sector. Troops in drab fatigue shifted among structures. Hans anticipated they would fire on him. Conversely, one of them spotted Greta and shouted. 2 troopers sprinted toward them. One was African-American, and they lifted her from his grasp without inquiry. Bore her to a dwelling 3 streets over, painted with a red cross. That is the place he encountered Captain Reed. The physician assessed Greta and stated the fragment had clipped her hepatic artery. She required an operation and transfusion, or she would exsanguinate internally inside hours. Reed inspected their blood stores and returned, wagging his head. We possess 1 unit of type B positive, insufficient. She requires a minimum of 2 units, perhaps 3. I have 6 men compatible. 5 are in operations. The last is Johnson. Hans gazed at Private Marcus Johnson, 20 years of age, Georgia inflection, deep complexion, standing there, clutching his helmet, observing Greta with clear worry. No, Hans stated, take mine, you are O negative, incorrect group. Her system would repel it, and she would perish quicker. Locate another. There is no one other. Reed faced Johnson. Private, you prepared? Yes, sir. No pause. Reed gazed back at Hans. His eyes were blue, fatigued. This is the outcome if we fail to act. In 30 minutes, her blood pressure falls past crucial. Her organs begin failing. Kidneys, liver, brain. She lapses into unconsciousness. Then she perishes. I have witnessed it 100 times. He stopped. Or we perform a transfusion from Johnson. We restore blood volume to her body. We gain time for the operation. And perhaps she survives. Black blood? Hans murmured. It will contaminate her. Reed's look did not alter. That is not the way blood functions. Blood group is blood group. You have 17 minutes. Decide. Hans gazed at Johnson. The trooper held his stare. Did not avert his gaze. I am unable, Hans stated. Then she perishes. And you convince yourself you allowed her to die untainted. That is more important than her living. Hans sensed something fracture within his ribs. 16 minutes, Reed stated. The transfusion requires 43 minutes. Johnson rests on a cot beside Greta, his limb outstretched, needle secured. The line joining them is clear. Hands can view the blood flowing, throbbing with Johnson's pulse, deep crimson moving from dark flesh into pale. Reed operates swiftly, checking both patients. Her pressure is reacting. Excellent. Johnson, you feeling all right? Yes, sir. Bit lightheaded. That is expected. We are drawing roughly 3 units. Hans sits in the alcove observing his daughter get blood from a male the party insisted was scarcely human. Yet she is inhaling simpler now, her flesh becoming less ashen. This is momentary, he assures himself. They are shaming us. Yet Reed is not snickering. He is noting Greta's pulse, altering the flow speed, professional and attentive, and Johnson ... Hans continues sneaking looks. The trooper's eyes are shut, jaw clenched, donating blood is painful. The needle is substantial. Yet he makes no complaint. Why? Hans speaks abruptly. His English is broken but comprehensible. Reed glances up. Why what? Why aid her? She is German, the foe. Reed goes back to inspecting Greta's 4. She is a child with a fragment injury. That is the only thing I perceive. I would not act this way. If it were an American youngster and German blood. Reed holds his gaze. Yes, I am aware. That is the distinction between us. The statement lands like a blow. Johnson talks without unclosing his lids. Have a young sister back home? She is around that age. Could not refuse to help. Hans gapes at him. You possess a sister? Yes, sir, Emily. She is 10. You are a family man? Only a brother, sir. But yes, a family man. The terms do not match. The placards depicted black troopers as brutes. Not males with young sisters called Emily, yet Greta's complexion is coming back. Her respiration stable, her lips rosy once more instead of ashen. Reed detaches Johnson after 45 minutes. That is sufficient. He pushes gauze against the trooper's limb, secures it. Have some juice. Rest for an hour. That is a command. Yes, sir. Johnson rises gradually, lurches, balances himself. He gazes at Greta for a lengthy second, then nods to Reed and departs. He does not glance at Hans, just exits. Reed readies Greta for the operation. Following 10 minutes, he looks at Hans. You may wait externally during the process. She will survive? If I can mend the artery and there is no contamination, yes. She has a solid opportunity now, due to the blood. Due to the blood? Hans gazes at his daughter. At the bandage on her limb where Johnson's blood went into her vessels. What occurs to her? He inquires softly. Later, what occurs to her blood? Reed halts, swivels to face Hans squarely. Nothing occurs. It flows, maintains her life. In several months, her system replenishes it automatically. But the blood itself? It is only cells. Red cells transporting oxygen, white cells battling contamination. There is no German blood or black blood. There is only blood. And hers is identical to his, where it matters type B positive. The party instructed. I am not concerned what the party instructed. I am concerned with medicine. And medicine is data. Your daughter is living because Johnson's blood possessed the correct antigens. All the rest is Taylor's humans invented to validate despising one another. Reed's tone is not enraged, just weary, boundlessly weary. Hans desires to dispute, but Greta is inhaling. Her heart is pulsing. The blood did not end her, it rescued her. Reed motions to the doorway. Wait, externally. This will require a few hours. Hans rises, moves to the doorway, halts. The trooper. Johnson, where is he? Provisions tent. 2 structures over. Hans locates Johnson seated on a cot sipping from a canteen. The trooper glances up, spots Hans, and his look becomes deliberately neutral. Hans remains there. Section 20 of 25 phrases jumble in his mind in 3 tongues. Thank you, he at last states. Johnson nods gradually. She? Your child? Yes, Greta. Lovely name. Your sister, Emily? She is well? To my knowledge, have not received post in 6 weeks. Johnson takes another sip. She is bright. Wants to be a teacher. Greta also wants teacher. Before war, Hans pauses. I am regretful for what I thought of you. Before, Johnson observes him for a long beat. You believe I am unaware what you all were instructed about us? We got informed. They displayed the propaganda placards. Same things they say about us back home, just amplified. The words strike Hans unexpectedly. In America? But America opposes? America opposes Hitler? That does not mean America is flawless. Johnson's voice is steady. I cannot dine in half the eateries in my hometown. Cannot vote. Army is separate. We battle in divided units. He meets Hans's gaze. But none of that means I permit a young girl to perish when I can aid her. That is not regarding politics. That is regarding being human. Hans feels something move in his chest, a bedrock splitting. You battle for a nation that treats you this way? I battle because Hitler is worse. Battle because perhaps things improve after. Or perhaps they do not. But at minimum, I will know I acted right. Johnson reclines on the cot. Your daughter is going to be okay. Doctor is skilled. Yes, because of you. Because of blood type. Johnson's lips curve faintly, though yes, because of me too. Hans turns to depart, then pauses. When war is finished, if you visit Cologne again, I would wish to thank you correctly. Johnson regards him. Perhaps I will do that. Hans returns to wait outside the operation. His thoughts churn. The placards do not align with Johnson's careful courtesy. The admonitions about pollution do not align with Greta's even respiration. The assurances of American cruelty do not align with Reed's professional diligence. What if it was all a falsehood? The notion is horrifying, because if they lied about this, they lied about all of it. The triumphs that were losses, the foes who were not lesser, the cause that was never righteous. Greta awakens 3 days later. Hans is seated by her cot when her eyes flutter open. Papa, I am here, dearest. I do not ache any more. The American physician mended you. You had an operation, and you required blood. A soldier gave you his blood. A kind man. Greta accepts this and shuts her eyes again, drifting. Hans sits there clasping her hand, feeling the pulse in her wrist, Johnson's blood moving through her heart. Over the next week, Hans observes the Americans working. The field hospital aids everyone. German civilians, German troopers, displaced persons. Reed does not inquire about party affiliation before operating. One aged woman murmurs to Hans, "Maybe we were deceived about many things." He nods, cannot voice it yet, but he is considering it endlessly. On the 5th day, Johnson comes to see Greta. He carries chocolate, actual chocolate. The type no one in Germany has had in years. Greta gazes at it like it is a wonder. For me? Johnson looks at Hans. Hans nods. Greta takes a tiny bite, her eyes widening. It is so good. Johnson smiles. Yeah, we get the fine stuff. He sits on the edge of her cot. How you feeling? Better. Papa says you gave me blood. Johnson glances at Hans. Hans nods assent. That is correct. You required some, and mine was the correct group. Does that make us kin? Johnson chuckles, surprised and sincere. Sort of, I suppose. Then you are like my uncle, Uncle Marcus. Thank you, Uncle Marcus. Something crosses Johnson's expression. His smile turns more authentic. You are welcome, kiddo. Hans witnesses this interaction and feels his former convictions disintegrating. His daughter naming a black man uncle, and it being proper. That evening, Hans questions Greta. Do you recall what Papa instructed you about different people? Greta considers that some were superior to others. Yes, but that is illogical, Papa. Uncle Marcus rescued me. If he was wicked, he would not do that. So the instruction must be incorrect. Child reasoning, indisputable, yes, Hans says. The instruction was incorrect? Did you believe it? Hans could dissemble. But he is so weary of falsehoods. Yes, I believed it. Why? Because I was directed to, and it was simpler to believe than to doubt. She nods, content. Children pardon so readily. Hans volunteers at the field hospital as a translator. He watches Reed operate. Watches him save German troopers who battled against Americans days prior. Watches him remain awake 36 hours straight aiding civilians. One night, Hans sees Reed collapse. A 7-year-old boy perishes from infected injuries, despite everything Reed attempted. Hans observes through a doorway as the American physician rests against a wall, shoulders trembling, quiet tears streaming down his face. Reed weeps for a German child. Hans understands. This man is superior to me. This foe has more compassion than I ever possessed. Late that night, Hans and Reed share cigarettes outside the hospital. It is late April. Everyone knows the war is concluding. What will you do? Hans asks after war. Go home, Philadelphia. Try to recall how to exist without surgical theaters. Reed takes a puff. You? I do not know. Reconstruct, but not as before. No, Hans is silent. I instructed my daughter to hate. Then one of those people saved her life with his own blood? What does that make me? Reed looks at him, someone who learned. That is not valueless. It should not demand my daughter nearly perishing to learn to see people as people. No, it should not. Reed extinguishes his cigarette. The query is what you do with it now. In May, Germany capitulates. Reed is being reassigned back to the States. On his final day, Hans brings Greta to say farewell. Reed shakes her hand gravely. You remain healthy, Greta. I will. Thank you for mending me. Hans offers his hand. Reed accepts it. They shake, former foes, improbable allies. I will not forget this, Hans says, what you did. What Johnson did. I will not forget what it instructed me. Good, do not. And do not permit her to forget either. She is going to mature in a different Germany, ensure it is a better one. Johnson materializes, duffel bag on his shoulder. He spots them, comes over, heard you all were here. Did not want to depart without saying bye. Greta hugs his midsection. He is startled, then embraces her back gently. You be good, kiddo. I will, Uncle Marcus. Will you write to us, if I am able? Mail is difficult from Georgia to Germany, but I will attempt it. Hans offers his hand. Johnson looks at it, pauses for just a moment, then accepts it. Thank you, Hans says. You rescued my daughter. You rescued me also, in a different manner. Johnson nods gradually. You look after her. She is special, I know. They shake, both grasping this is more than politeness. This is traversing a boundary the old world said could not be traversed. Then they are gone. Back to an America Hans does not grasp, but now wishes to. In 1950, Hans Zimmermann testified at a denazification proceeding in Munich. The arbiters asked what altered his view on Nazi racial theory. A black soldier's blood saved my daughter's life, he said. I believed it would poison her. I was taught this was scientific fact. But when she was dying, I had to choose between my beliefs and her life. I chose her life, and she lived. Every claim the party made about blood was proven false. The evidence was in her veins. One arbiter leaned forward. So, you no longer hold National Socialist beliefs? I hold no beliefs that require children to die to prove them true, Hans said. Everything I was taught was a lie. I helped spread those lies. I taught them to my daughter. I cannot reverse that, but I can refuse to spread them further. They classified him as a follower. Mandatory re-education, probation, close surveillance. Hans accepted it all. He merited worse. Hans and Greta emigrated to Detroit in 1951. Reed penned a letter of recommendation. So did Johnson. At his immigration meeting, Hans was starkly honest. "I was a Nazi," he told the official. "I believed the propaganda. I taught racial hatred to my daughter. An American doctor and a black soldier saved her life, and in doing so, they saved mine. I want to live in a country where that kind of humanity is possible. I want to prove I can be better than what I was." The official regarded him. "Why should we believe you have changed? I do not ask you to believe me. I ask you to watch me. Let me prove it with deeds, not pledges." They approved the visa. Detroit was complex. Hans saw separate neighborhoods, saw the frictions Reed and Johnson had described, but he also saw potential. Black children going to school, black workers in plants, black veterans demanding the rights they had battled for. He registered Greta in school. She made friends fast. One was black, a girl named Sharon, whose father worked at Ford. When Greta brought Sharon home the first time, Hans made them both tea. Listened to them discuss schoolwork and music and boys. After Sharon departed, Greta asked, "Are you really okay with this?" "More than okay, proud. You see people as people, the way I should have always done." In 1952, Hans joined the Detroit NAACP. They were wary, a German immigrant wanting to work for black civil rights, but he detailed his story about learning that humanity does not follow the lines drawn by bigots. "I spent years believing some people were inferior," he told them. "I was wrong. When I see America making similar errors with different words, I cannot stay quiet, not again." They let him join. He did basic work, mailings, phone calls, fundraising. Gradually, they learned to trust him. In 1954, when Brown v. Board of Education was ruled, Hans wept reading the newspaper. "Separate is not equal," he read aloud to Greta. "That is what the court said. In Germany, we said Jews must be separate. We lied. We used that lie to justify everything. I wish I'd understood this 30 years ago." Greta sat beside him. "You understand it now. You are saying it now. That is what matters." In 1963, Hans was 61. When the Detroit NAACP arranged buses to the March on Washington, he was on one of them. He stood on the National Mall listening to Martin Luther King Jr. speak about dreams. Dreams of children joining hands regardless of color. Hans thought about Greta calling Johnson Uncle Marcus, about how correct she had been, about how the children see it first, always. Hans Zimmermann died in 1985. Dr. Greta Zimmermann, now a hematologist at Detroit Medical Center, held his hand as he faded away. "Did I do enough?" he whispered. "You did what you could, Papa. You learned. You changed. You tried to make things better. That is more than most people do." The obituary noted his work with the NAACP, his refugee advocacy, his devotion to civil rights. It did not note he had been Wehrmacht, that he had taught his daughter to hate. Greta ensured his memorial service included that story anyway, because concealing truth helps no one. Marcus Johnson flew up from Georgia for the service. He was 73, gray-haired but straight-backed. He sat in the front row. When Greta spoke, she told the complete story. The field hospital, the shrapnel, the choice, the blood transfusion that proved everything wrong. "My father was wrong," she said. "He believed terrible things, but he learned. He changed. And he spent 40 years trying to make amends, because he met a man who showed him that humanity does not follow the divisions we invent." After the service, Johnson approached her. "Your father was a good man," Johnson said. "Eventually, yes, eventually. But he got there. That is more than most people manage. Your father questioned. He changed. He admitted he was wrong." "That takes courage? He always said it was you who gave him that courage?" Johnson smiled slightly. "Sometimes that is all it takes, one person doing the right thing at the right time, and someone's whole worldview cracks open. In 2024, Dr. Greta Zimmermann is 90 years old. She still consults on difficult cases. She gives talks at schools and conferences, always the same story. Students always ask, 'Did you feel different after getting his blood?' No. Blood is just blood. Did your father really change? Yes, I watched it happen, slowly, painfully, but yes. Why are you telling us this? Because humanity is learned. My father learned to hate. Those lessons almost killed me. Then he learned something different. But he only learned because he was forced to confront truth. I tell you this so maybe you can learn without someone having to nearly die first. Do in her office, she keeps 2 photographs. Captain Thomas Reed in 1945, young and exhausted in his field hospital coat. Private Marcus Johnson the same year, chocolate bar in hand, smiling. Between them sits a small vial. Empty now. But once it held type B, positive blood, the blood that saved a girl's life. The blood that saved her father's soul. The blood that proved the propagandists wrong about everything that mattered. We are all made of the same materials, same blood, same flesh, same capacity for both cruelty and compassion. The only question is which one we choose and whether we learn soon enough to matter. Thank you for viewing. I trust you liked the video and felt moved. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Catch you in the next one.